A top official in the federal student loan program resigning this week, calling the system, quote, fundamentally broken. And now he's calling to hike corporate taxes to help wipe out billions of dollars in student debt. That official joins me now. He is Wayne Johnson, not to be confused with The Rock. This is another Wayne Johnson. Good to see you, sir. Thanks for joining us. We're talking about a lot of money here. It's not just a few billion. We're talking about almost $1 trillion worth of student debt. Is that right?
Actually, the student debt is right now at $1.6 trillion.
So how would you pay for wiping out at least a good chunk of that debt?
Well, the way you pay for the program going forward is through a 1% tax on both for-profit and not-for-profit corporations. And that would actually, if you put that 1% against $24 trillion, which is the amount of top-line revenues that those entities actually put forth, you generate $240 billion a year. Approximately $140 billion of that would be used to pay the Go Forward program, and then the additional $100 billion would actually be used to pay off and reduce the amount of money that's already been borrowed by the U.S. Treasury and actually been put out into the market.
Now, I don't want to get too much in the weeds here, but you're talking about a tax on revenue. Usually in America, we have income tax, that is tax on money that you've made. But a revenue tax is something very different. It's more like Liz Warren's wealth tax, where you would tax a company even if it didn't make money that year, even if it lost money, you would tax them on revenue. That's a whole different ballgame, right?
Well, it is a very straightforward approach, and the reason for the tax on revenue is even though we had a wonderful reduction in the tax rate for corporations from 35% to 21%, there's still that actually, is basically the nominal tax rate. But if you look at the strike-through tax rate, many of our, quite frankly, most successful corporations in America pay little or no tax. So
I understand.
If you start looking at it in terms, and then also, I'm sure you recognize that not-for-profits pay no tax, yet they enjoy the opportunity to be able to select from an educated workforce. I believe both the not-for-profits and the for-profits should be charged against their top line.
But, Mr. Johnson, I'm sure you've seen the economic numbers and you've been following the job numbers, which are the best in my lifetime. Part of that reason is because a lot of companies, when we lowered the corporate tax to the current level, a lot of companies who'd been in Ireland and places with low corporate tax came back, and companies began to expand in ways that they hadn't expanded before, and that led to the job growth. If you're raising taxes on revenue, and that could be a big raise for a company like Apple, for example, that would be an 18% increase. That could force a lot of the companies to move out again, and that wouldn't be good for our jobs.
Well, I disagree. I've looked at the different tax rates against the various countries throughout the world, and you'd have to be going to some place like Paraguay or some of the Middle Eastern countries to be able to enjoy enough of a tax change for you to.
We did see. I mean, we saw a lot of companies. We saw a lot of companies go to Ireland. I could list several dozen just off the top of my head. But let me just one thing quickly that I agree with you on is that the system is broken. When we put the system in the hands of the government, took it away from the banks, that screwed things up. Should we go back to the banking system rather than the government system? Quickly.
Well, actually, my proposal is no government loans whatsoever. It would be the amount of education that we would put forth paid for by the government would be through a voucher system. And yes, and that should get everybody through under my plan through an undergraduate degree. But when people start going for advanced degrees, the banking system is fully capable, fully prepared. There's plenty of liquidity in the system. And quite frankly, the banking system will bring a discipline that we do not.
I think you're right now
we have mandatory funding authorized by Congress to go against basically an unlimited drawdown for highly unorthodox loans, and we need to basically settle in on what we're good for.
And Mr. Johnson, we have to run, but we saw how that worked out with the subprime loan situation. It doesn't help situation when you give loans to people who can't pay them back. Wayne Johnson, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.